Welcome into the Jon and Lebo show. It's draft day. The NBA draft is here. John, you're a Philadelphia 76ers fan. You must be excited, right?
Yeah, I can't wait. When this trade happened a couple days ago, I was so pumped about getting Markelle Fultz for the Sixers. But I'm really excited this week, Alex. And usually I get all riled up over the draft, but I got a very exciting and hilarious retweet on Twitter the other night from a former Phillies pitcher who pitched for the team for 7 years. Not only was he there for that long, but he was a World Series champion.
Oh, wow. He's a
Brett
legend.
Myers. So, just to give you a little background, on June 19th, 3 days ago, I tweeted out that Brett Myers, the former Philly who pitched on the 2008 World Series team, is a life-changing country singer. Check him out on Spotify ASAP. So I tweeted that to be funny. Who retweets it other than the great Brett Myers? And not only did he retweet it, but other people retweeted it and tweeted back at me. I've been trying to say this for so long and clearly didn't detect my sarcasm. He also put in his bio, singer/songwriter. 2 albums. 2. Oh, great. 2 albums. That's great. His albums are in the store now. But yeah, his if you guys want to check him out on Twitter, his picture is him chugging a beer and then him throwing 2 other beers behind him while he's on stage performing. So you know how
you got a couple retweets, double-digit likes. Always good. You're getting the exposure out there, and you're getting the word that Brett Myers, as good as he was as a relief pitcher, he's probably an even better country singer. It's great stuff.
Guess what his location is on Twitter, where he says he is, location. You know, some people say, oh, New York, Boston, Philly, whatever. His is Rebel Nation.
Rebel Nation. I know them.
Yeah, so do I. I wish I did. And then his pin tweet is that it's going to be a backwoods party.
Wait,
anyway, I just thought everyone would want to know that that happened, and it was the peak of my existence that he retweeted me, and I've never felt more alive.
You see, I don't go after those retweets. There's a lot of people on Twitter who
I
will
didn't
tweet
go
things.
after it.
No, you did it. It was sarcasm, which is funny that he picked it up, and he didn't pick up the sarcasm. He picked up the tweet, I just thought there's a lot of people on Twitter who try to tweet over the top nice things about celebrities simply to get acknowledgement. It's just relax, they don't need you. You don't need them. Stop trying to be a Twitter whore,
Happy birthday to my favorite athlete ever, Derek Jeter at DG22.
I'd block. Imagine if if I was ever that caliber of celebrity, imagine just blocking those people just to get in their head. The people who are diehard, block. That'd be amazing. That'd be a power move.
Happy birthday, Derek! No,
don't do that. All right, we should probably get into our poll that we had on the website this week. The poll, just to refresh your memory, who got the better end of the Philadelphia Sixers Boston Celtics trade? Just to remind people, it was the Celtics' #1 pick in exchange for the Philadelphia 76ers 3rd overall pick this draft, plus next year's LA Lakers pick between 2 and 5, so top 1 protected and not beyond 5. If that one is not within the 2nd and the 5th pick, they will get the Sacramento Kings pick, top 1 protected. And if that is the #1 pick, if the Sacramento Kings do have the #1 pick, they will then get the Philadelphia 76ers 2019 first-round pick. A lot of things go into that trade, very convoluted. But the people have spoken. They think the 76ers got the best deal, the best end of that deal. 57% of our voters, we had 81 votes, 57% of them voted for the Sixers, 43% voted for the Celtics. John, who do you think got the better end of the deal?
Alex, I'm just going to tell you right now, this is a completely unique take that you probably haven't heard before at all. So original. I think that we're just going to have to wait and see as to who got the better end of the deal. No, I'm just kidding. Look, the Celtics made a very smart move here. They made a very smart move. If you don't want Markelle Fultz, you see what everyone's thinking to trade up for Markelle Fultz. The only thing that was bad about the Celtics here, in my opinion, teams were interested in moving up to #1, and not enough teams had the amount of assets to move up to #1 that the Sixers had. So the Sixers obviously were able to give up the most and didn't have to move up that many spots. So I think that had something to do with it as well. But, I mean, they're moving up 2 spots. They gave him a pick that's going to be top 10. think that's more than fair to move up to number one. And the Celtics got a very good end out of that deal. Now they have even more assets that they want to package some of them up for a star and use the other half of them for the future, or just use all of them for the future to prepare for a post-LeBron/KD era. But I really think that if you look at it right now, from a perspective right now, the Sixers, since we're right now before the draft, the Sixers as of today, since people are voting on it and whatever, from what you hear, they're getting a guy that is going to be a huge team fit. They needed a player like this really bad. They needed a scoring guard that'll fit with their other two, Simmons and Embiid, really well. So the fact that we know what the Sixers have and we don't know what the Celtics are going to end up doing with that trade, as of right now, by default, the Sixers are the winners, I think. But ultimately, in the end, Boston could end up being good. Markelle Fultz could end up being not that great, just like a side piece for Simmons and Embiid if they're both healthy. And the Celtics could get Jason Tatum, who ends up being a 25-point-per-game scorer. So it really depends. After tonight, I'll be able to tell you what it is. I mean, if they say they take Tatum tonight, it's all right. It was essentially a Tatum for Fultz trade. And we'll see. It's really, really based on that. But I think Boston, the fact that they were to acquire such a heavy asset for only moving down 2 spots and still getting the player that I want, I think that was huge.
I mean, it all comes down to Danny Ainge's ability to evaluate talent. If he thinks that the number one guy in the draft is whoever they get at number 3, then obviously it's a no-brainer. But hitting on that number 3 pick is a totally separate argument. Will that guy pan out? Will they even keep this number 3 pick? Will they trade back and try to get Sacramento's 5th and 10th overall pick? I think those are all possibilities. But want someone not named Markelle Fultz, and there were a lot of teams who wanted him. Why not move down and get more assets? But you are right to an extent. You have to wait and see how it pans out. Markelle Fultz was the guy in this draft. Danny Ainge looks like a moron. He still does get some assets, and maybe if that Lakers pick does fall within 2 and 5 next season, then it maybe looks a little bit better because next year's draft seems like it might be deep as well. But you do have to see, you have to wait and see how it pans out. I think still the Celtics got the better end of this deal just on paper, simply because their guy is still going to be available at number 3. And you could argue that whether or not they hit on that guy is a completely separate argument. Their evaluation is different than most teams. So why not move down, spend less money, gain assets, and potentially assets for I think the Sixers, I get them making this deal, and they still have their own draft pick next season and the year after that. But I don't know. I think keeping these picks wouldn't have been the worst idea as well. You know, you don't know if Ben Simmons is going to be that great. You don't know if Joel Embiid will sustain, will stay healthy. And we don't know if Markelle Fultz will be the guy, and maybe that guy is going to be available at number 3. I don't know. I think the Celtics have the better end of this deal for, you know, if you're judging, you know, which was better for which team. I think the Celtics, it was a no-brainer, and it was really it was literally just gaining an asset and not giving up anything that you were going to take in the first place.
And you look at, okay, like it's not like any team, like no team got robbed. You got to think about that. No team got robbed. It's a weird case because the Sixers and Celtics, most historic rivalry in the NBA. These teams never trade with each other. They don't want to benefit each other. They don't want to help anyone out. But this is a weird situation. Both teams have a ton of assets. The Sixers still have, what is it, like 5 first-round picks in the next 3 drafts. The Celtics still have, they could have up to 7 in the next 3 drafts. So that's why it's not really that much of a risky trade for either. But if you look at it, I think it's riskier for the Celtics. That's what you just have to look at it in that sense. Because Fultz is the consensus number 1 guy from most NBA experts and analysts. So that's why the ball's in the Celtics' court when it comes to being like risky, when it comes to making the risky move. They did it. They made the riskier end of the move. But obviously we'll see how it ends up. But at the end of the day, maybe it won't end up being that risky because they have a ton of other assets anyway. And maybe both these players will both end up great. So who knows? But anyway, I thought
here's the thing. This is what the Celtics, they already have like a kind of a core. They were the number one seed in the East. They still have a lot of good young players, and they're going to be set for the future. And they took a route that I think the Philadelphia 76ers maybe should have taken, and that's gathering more assets, not go all in on this guy who might not pan out. Maybe he does, but I don't, I'm not that high on Markelle Fultz, and I try to convince myself that he was the guy before the Celtics traded that pick. But if you look at everything, the guy won 9 games in college. And I know he didn't have a great setting around. He didn't have a great team around him. But you got to think that the number one pick in the draft can at least win double-digit games for his team. And one thing that's been floated around as well is his competitive edge. Does he really have as much of a competitive edge, competitive spirit as, a Josh Jackson or even maybe Alonzo Ball? I don't know. But they're all issues. He doesn't seem like the type of guy, at least personality-wise, and given his college record, doesn't seem like the type of guy who's going to take over the NBA. That's just my personal opinion. I think Danny Ainge saw that, and that's why he traded down. The Sixers are going all in on this guy. Who knows if he's going to work out? They're a team that takes risks. They took a risk on Joel Embiid, and I know people are really high on him, but we don't know if that's going to work out either. Ben Simmons, he's out his entire first year, and the verdict's still out on him. He'll probably be a good NBA player, but we don't know if Markelle Fultz will be the guy. And when you give up a potential top 5 pick to move up two spots to get him, when the reality is you probably could have gotten Alonzo or Markelle at the 3rd spot if you didn't take the Celtics deal. I just doesn't make much sense to me. I just look at that and I think, this is a team that needs to rebuild and get a lot of this young talent. I don't think trading away your first round picks is the best way to go about rebuilding when you're risking it on a guy who just might not pan out.
I mean, they still have a lot of high first round picks in the next couple drafts. And when you look at a guy like Fultz, that argument of he didn't win many games in college, think of it this way. The best player on the team thought that he was going to have DeJounte Murray and Marquise Chris still at Washington when he decided to play there. Those 2 guys were gone. They went to the NBA and are having solid NBA careers now. You go to a team, and
that team also was a 19-win team that year. The year before he came.
Look at the rest of the Pac-12 when he joined it. That team had DeJounte Murray and Marquise Chris, and they were really good. And then they thought the Fultz thought he was joining that team. Instead, those 2 were gone. They had a bunch of wash-up scrubs. And the Pac-12 took a massive leap this year as opposed to last year. Look at UCLA.
They only won 2 games in their conference.
They went from one of the worst offenses in all of college basketball. Now they get Lonzo Ball, and now they're number 1 with a great and they TJ Leaf, who's going to be drafted high, Bryce Alford, who is a great asset to that team. USC took a huge jump too and became a lot better. Oregon made it to the Final Four. Tyler Dorsey had a great tournament. So the fact that they only had 9 wins, I don't care about that as much as I care about seeing all of his numbers that he put up. 2, he missed some time in college. And 3, just all of those high upside aspects of his game that you saw when he was in college. The amount of athleticism that he has, how smooth he is with scoring at the rim and his jumper. He's just a pure scorer. The guy can shoot over people. He has a 7-foot wingspan. He has a ton of upside. So if you're the Sixers, you're like, all right, I have a ton of first-round picks. I think this guy who showed a lot to us in college is the number 1 overall, is the consensus best player, and we think he is. We have all these picks. The Celtics are willing to only take one of them off our hands for us to move up, and we're able to snag this guy that we want to build around to end our young core. Why not?
Listen, they're going all in on this guy. They think he's the real deal, and I mean, they have evaluators to judge that type of stuff. I'm going to trust Danny Ainge on this, though. And I know that, he hasn't been a great evaluator of talent. He's been good at evaluating guards throughout his career. And the reality is, a lot of the reason he hasn't drafted well is because he's been stuck in the mid to late first round with his first-round picks for the majority of his Celtics career as an executive. So he hasn't really had much of an opportunity to snag a top 5 player, with the exception of Jeff Green and Jaylen Brown. I just don't. Markelle Fultz, back to him. His numbers are probably inflated at Washington because he had no one else. If he's on a Kentucky or Kansas or that UCLA team, whatever, He's not scoring 22 a game. He's not averaging 6 assists, 6 rebounds, whatever it was. His numbers aren't going to be as high. He had a lot of exposure there because he was the guy on a really crappy team. He's the only good part of that team. I get that. I don't know. I'm not super high in him. He doesn't have that it factor for me to think that he's going to be this next Russell Westbrook. He doesn't have that edge.
I think he does. The guy was cut from his varsity team when he was a junior in high school. Went from being cut from his varsity team to working his ass off, proving himself, then being the #1 prospect in the country, and then the #1 pick in the NBA draft. He absolutely has that.
Okay, but okay, I hate. First of all, I don't like that argument because you don't know what he was like as a junior in high school. He could have been a complete a-hole and just turned that attitude around. He could have been someone who had a huge growth spurt between his junior and senior year. He might have filled out or been a late bloomer. Who knows? I'm not going to use that argument because I don't know. Like, it's not like he just like you get cut from your varsity team as a junior and then this chip on your shoulder drives you to the NBA. No, he's skilled. He's talented. If he got cut from his team his junior year, that's probably partially on him, right? Like, I don't think that you can look at that and be like, you know what?
Obviously, it's on him. It's how he played.
Exactly. So maybe he just had a shit attitude. Maybe he just wasn't that good then. Maybe he just bloomed after his junior year. I don't know. All I know is he won 9 games at Washington. He was on a crappy team. He did well. He's been hyped. And I think when you have a guy like who's the last #1 pick to come from a college team that was as bad as Washington was this year, that had as poor of a record?
I don't know. I don't really think. I don't. It doesn't matter.
I guarantee you, there's a correlation between that and the success of their career. I guarantee you, a guy who's won 9 games in his freshman year of college and then goes to the draft. I guarantee you, his NBA career isn't as good as the guy who made it to the Final Four, Sweet 16, whatever. I'll look that up after this, but I'm sure that correlates in some way. I'm not sold on Markelle Fultz. I don't know if he's going to be that good, and if he isn't, the Sixers do not get the better end of this deal. They look like morons to some extent. Not morons. I mean, it's the consensus, but it's not a deal worth making if he's not the clear-cut guy. I don't think he's the clear-cut guy. That's I'll bring it full circle. My main argument, Markelle Fultz is not the clear-cut #1 pick. He's probably he might be the best player, most NBA-ready player in the draft right now, but I don't think he's worth giving up another potential top 5 pick to get him. And I think this is a kind of a move of desperation for the Sixers in some way.
He's not going to have to be the guy here. There's a bunch of other really good
players. Then why would you trade another top 5 pick to get him?
Because they think he's going to be – no, I'm just saying for him personally, there's not going to be much pressure on him to be the guy because there are other much higher drafted guys that are on the team. Everyone's really in this together. His attitude in high school, it doesn't matter if from junior year to senior year – what it was, he changed and he got a lot better at his game, and making that switch from getting cut to being on JV to working your ass off and making ability. You're not just horrible at basketball and then, oh, wow, I just all of a sudden got good. Like, no, you have to put in an insane amount of work.
Okay, then maybe
incredibly skilled. And that's what he did. And now that's why he worked to be the #1 prospect. And that's why he's the #1 pick in the draft.
You're not just horrible at basketball, but maybe he didn't show that effort. Maybe he got a kick in the ass after his junior year, being like, how do you – this is on you. This isn't on the coach. This is on you for not putting in the effort. And, I mean, that if he goes back to his old ways, this is all speculation. I think if I'm the Sixers, though, I would have probably done that 3rd pick for Sacramento's 5th and 10th over trading the 3rd and next year's top 5 pick for – the #1 pick for a guy who might not pan out, because they need a point guard. That's what they're trying to get, Markelle Fultz. You could have gotten a Dennis Smith at #5, maybe #10 if you traded down, and you would have had another asset on top of that, and you would have continued to rebuild and have a more well-rounded team instead of giving up multiple assets for one.
But Fultz has way more of an upside than any of those guys, and he was a clear-cut. Every mock draft you see, I didn't see a single one that didn't have him going #1. There was a lot of he's clearly the best player in the draft as of right now. He has the most upside of most players in the draft, and he has a ton of skills out of most of the players in the draft. So that's why they wanted to move up for him, and they could see that, and they thought, okay, we're giving up. It might end up being a top 5 pick next year, but we're still going to get high picks. And if it's not 2 through 5, 5 through 15 pick. Who knows what it'll end up being? It's not definitely top 5. It was low risk, and if Fultz ends up not being a superstar, they still won't even look that bad because they didn't have to give up that much to move up.
A top 5 pick is a lot, and
it might not be a top 5 pick.
It's going to be okay. Top 10 pick. I don't know what it would. It might not be, but you're still risking it. I saw it. They have the Celtics have between like a 94-96% chance of landing a top 5 pick within this year or next year's draft or the year after that.
Yeah, because of the Nets, obviously.
No. I'm talking in general with the Lakers or the Kings pick, and you know I don't know.
That's not wait 94% to get either a top 5 through the Lakers or Kings pick. That's not right.
It is. It's someone. I heard it on radio somewhere, but it was a stat.
It's definitely 95% that either the Lakers or Nets or Kings out of the next 3 years will land them a top 5 pick somewhere. It's not because of those two.
No, it was. Yeah, this might have been before the Brook Lopez trade, but just I think that like Celtics met with Markelle Fultz before they made this trade. They met with him. One thing that Brad Stevens and Danny Ainge like is a guy who has a drive and a willingness to compete. Maybe that interview with Markelle Fultz turned them off of him. Maybe it was the workout. I don't know. I just think that there's something there that's being way too overhyped, and I'm just not buying it. I'm not buying the Markelle Fultz hype. I think just given everything, I've kind of flipped around. I did a 180. On whether he's worth it. I don't think he's worth that number 1 spot.
I think there's a big difference between the Celtics thinking that there's a better player in this draft than Fultz. Then there's a big difference between that and him not being that great and the Sixers not making this trade. I think there's a big difference between the two of those. And I do think, there's a possibility that one of those two guys ends up being better than, I'm sure. But this is an easy trade for them to make, and it was a good trade. And as of right now, I think that they look like the winners of the trade.
So if the Celtics at number 3 get the best player in the draft, you don't think it's a bad trade? Like in a
couple years,
2 years down the line.
I don't think it's a bad trade, but I think that it ends up working out more in the Celtics' favor, and they end up being the winner. Yeah.
How is that not a bad trade? Your
goal is they didn't have to give up that much, and they moved up to number 1. And it also depends on how good Fultz is.
But they passed up on a guy who was the best player in the draft and gave up assets to pass up on that guy. That's where my logic is at. Because if Markelle Fultz is not as good as people think he will be, and that number 3 pick is, then guess what? It's a bad trade. It's a horrible move by the Sixers because they gave up assets. A team that's rebuilding gave up assets to move up in the draft and get a guy that doesn't even pan out, which shows a lack of their ability to evaluate talent and just decision making in general for their future.
If the one guy ends up being better than Fultz, then it's not a great move.
It's all speculative.
Yeah, it's speculative, but it depends on Fultz. It depends on who the Celtics take and how they end up playing in the NBA. If they're both great players, it's still not that bad of a move because they had to give up 1 out of their 5 picks. I wanted to talk about the Lakers-Nets trade from a couple days ago. The Lakers, to me, are going through this massive gamble in hopes of signing multiple big-time free agents in 2018. And I know it's the Lakers. Oh, Magic Johnson. Oh, my God. Yeah, he's running things now. This is a huge, huge gamble. You're giving up, essentially, the number 2 overall pick from 2 years ago who shows he still has upside in D'Angelo Russell to the Nets just to dump Mozgov's contract. You're giving up that high of an asset just to dump a contract to get what? A 27th overall pick and a Brook Lopez rental? I think that's just – they're giving up so much and they're risking a lot just to maybe Lopez resigns, maybe not, but they're giving up a lot just to maybe make room for these free agents in 2018. What happens if what happens if they're not able to sign these guys? Then you lose a number 2 overall pick and you have Paul George and Brook Lopez. So what? That doesn't help you for the future. It helps you for right now, and maybe that'll get you an 8 or 7 seed. I don't see it as a great move. The Nets got a really good trade, and this brings it all back to Sean Marks. Sean Marks has been a good GM for them, and he's made nothing but good moves. He got a first-round pick for Bojan Bogdanovic a couple years ago. That was a great trade. The guy's done nothing but good for Brooklyn. They still got a lot of years, obviously, before they get back to where they were. But in my opinion, at the end of the day, trading and risking that much to just make room to hopefully sign superstars is crazy to me. Maybe you give up some guys and clear contracts like that and give up a little bit. Maybe if they gave up Randall, I don't think it would have been that bad of a deal. But Russell? Like, oh my God.
Maybe giving up Randall, that would have been a bad deal. I think it's silly. People think that the Lakers are going to magically just become this great team. If LeBron James signs with them, yeah, but I don't have any confidence in that front office.
That's a huge if.
That's a huge if, yeah. And the fact that they're even pursuing Paul George is also idiotic, in my opinion. You want to give up assets for a guy who's not going to help you win this year, that's probably going to end up going to LA after next season anyway. Like, why would you waste assets on Paul George when it's pretty much a certainty that he's going to sign with you? It's just stupid. It's an impulsive front office that makes stupid moves, and they just gave up on their number 2 pick, who's, you say he's 21 years old, 22 years old. He could still be a good guard in the NBA, and instead you got 30-year-old Brook Lopez, who isn't going to help you win. He's not going to be on a championship Lakers team. I'm sorry.
Unless he's like the 3rd best player.
Or he'll be 35 by the time they compete. Or maybe, unless, again, LeBron James comes on board.
Yeah, that's what they're banking on, really. This is all.
Although, who says LeBron James doesn't go to the Clippers? Because Doc's the coach of the Clippers. Don't you think he'd rather play for Doc than Luke Walton?
I don't know. It really just also depends on who the Clippers get and what moves they make and who stays and who goes. End of the day, it was also, maybe if they were to give up a little bit to the Pacers to get Paul George now, what that might do is that would enhance their winning right now. Like, they would have Paul George, Lopez. Maybe they not an 8 seed, but maybe they would get. Yeah, maybe they'd be around that 8 seed and help them out more in getting LeBron over. If the Lakers think, okay, yeah, we have to give up some assets to get Paul George now, he's going to resign. We'll give him these assets. He'll resign, and this will be our tryout year for LeBron to see if LeBron will come here, because they've already put some chips in the pot by trading Russell and clearing that cap space in hopes of getting LeBron. Why not go all in at this point?
Yeah, I don't like it. I guess you can go all in, but again, that's a huge risk. And if you just get Paul George and then LeBron James decides not to come, you forge your future because you're giving out. Although Paul George, only 27, 28 years old, he's a great player, one of the best small forwards in the NBA. But still, you're giving up potential, decent assets to get this guy. Just doesn't make sense. It's impulsive, and it's just not the smartest move if I'm the Lakers.
It's not. I also want to mention, guys, check out our website, recently launched, the JonandLeboShow.com. We're also looking for writers, too. We've already got a few on board, but if you want to write for us, send us an email at JonandLeboShow@gmail.com. We'll be happy to get back to you and possibly get you on board. So the big headlines for tonight, Alex. Who will the Celtics pick? Who will the Sixers pick? Celtics are either going Tatum or Jackson. We know that. What trades do we expect to see for tonight? That's a big thing. There's going to be a few trades, I think. You got Portland, who wants to maybe move up. You don't know that. Or move up or also get rid of some contracts. You don't know. You got the Celtics, who are trying to free up some roster spots to maybe sign free agents and not have to pay guys long-term, like Marcus Smart or whatever. You have other teams like the Sixers, who are going to try to package some of their second-rounders to move back into the 20s. Or who knows? There's going to be a few moves made tonight, and it's going to be exciting.
Yeah, for sure. I'm definitely looking at my Celtics to see what they do. Trading that number 3 pick is definitely not out of question. One thing they're doing right now is they're leaking reports. There are reports leaking out that they're between Josh Jackson, Jason Tatum. I think that's a bunch of bullshit. I don't think they're going to pick either of those guys. I think that they're looking at Jonathan Isaac, and I think they're trying to manipulate the media right now. Maybe I'm completely wrong. I very well could be. But Josh Jackson is getting a lot of attention from NBA front offices. Yeah. They love this guy. They think he's the next big thing. They think he has a huge ceiling, and he didn't even work out with the Celtics. I think that rubs Danny Ainge the wrong way, and Brad Stevens for sure. I think that they're trying to get leverage to see if they could trade down again. trade that third pick for maybe, again, Sacramento's 5th and 10th pick, because Jonathan Isaac could be available at number 5. And they could get another guy at number 10 who can be a contributor, maybe not this year, but years to come. I think the Celtics are the most likely team to make a trade tonight, personally.
I could see them taking Jackson. I could see him taking Tatum. I heard reports were that he didn't want to work out for them at first because he didn't think they were actually serious about taking him at 1. And then after that, they weren't able to work out their schedules where he was going to be able to work out for them. But I don't see Ainge passing on a guy. If he really, really likes Jackson more than Tatum, I don't think he's going to pass on him because of his the fact that he didn't work out with him. But it's going to be it's easily I think Tatum or Jackson will be their best bet. But if they want to trade down and a team's willing to offer a lot to move up to the top 4, who knows? Maybe a team moving up to it could be a team in the mid-teens, could be a team in the bottom 10. Who knows?
Yeah, for sure. One thing people are trying to move, the Sixers are trying to move into the first round, trading a couple of their second-round picks. And I think you can see that for a guy like maybe Frank Mason, who people think might go undrafted. I don't think so. I think someone's going to take him and take him maybe even in the first round. I could definitely see that, just given how much he dominated in college and kind of the drive he had. He's a senior. He's older. You're getting a 22, 23-year-old player, but I think guys might trade up to get someone like that. The Celtics could definitely go Josh Jackson. Here's the thing is, Josh Jackson, Jason Tatum, and Jonathan Isaac are all the type of players that Danny Ainge loves. You have Jason Tatum, who doesn't have that great of a defensive game, but he's a great scorer, and they don't need another defensive wing. They don't need a guy who can lock down on the perimeter. They need that second scorer. They'll probably get with Gordon Hayward anyways. And that's why, you also have to take that into account. The reason I don't think they're getting Josh Jackson is because he's a lot like a Jaylen Brown, maybe a higher ceiling, but they're not going to get rid of Jaylen Brown. They think he could turn out to be a great player.
It's only been a year.
And if you're getting Gordon Hayward, you don't want to clutter it too much. And that's why I think Jonathan Isaac makes sense. He's someone who can play 1 through 5, probably play the 3 or the 4. And he's just super versatile, and you can bring him on a team that already has, a clustered backcourt. He's not going to be playing back there. He's someone who fills a need for the Celtics. He's a great defender. He can defend in the paint a little bit. He's a good rebounder. He's versatile, and he has a super high ceiling, and he's only 19 years old. That's why I think Danny Ainge is picking him. I don't think he's going Josh Jackson or Jason Tatum. I think it's about a couple things. One is need. You don't need Josh Jackson or Jason Tatum. You kind of have that void filled, and it's about who has the highest ceiling. And Jonathan Isaac, he didn't have that stellar of a college career. He only averaged like 12, 13 points, but he's still really raw. He has handles. He's someone who can fill many needs for the Celtics, and someone who can probably be available at 5. So that's why I think they might trade down.
Yeah, I can see it.
All right. Another read. Make sure you check out Calling It Podcast. It's my other podcast I host with Alex Barth. It's presented by Snap Call Sports. Comes out every Monday. So follow the Twitter at Calling It Pod. And this past week we had a great interview with great interviews with Adam Jones and Jim Murray, both of 98.5 CBS Sports in Boston, who were very gracious with their time. We also have a podcast coming out tomorrow, recording from Wellesley, Massachusetts, and we have a pretty good show stacked up. I forget who our guests are, but they're good guests, and you'll enjoy it. So Calling It Podcast comes out every Monday at Calling It Pod on Twitter. All right. Now for our new segment. It's the topics we don't care enough about to dedicate a full segment. Let's start it off, and let me get the clock going real quick. So, John, first one. Phil Jackson, Kristaps Porzingis, rather. Phil Jackson is exploring options, taking calls, and a trade seems like it might happen, maybe even tonight. Your thoughts?
It's not going to happen. Maybe Porzingis could be worth the trade if it's a massive overhaul It's not going to happen. I don't know what Phil's doing. This trade is honestly like a baby crying on an airplane. You just got to ignore it because you know it'll stop and you know it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, I think Phil Jackson is the old stubborn grandfather who can never admit when he's wrong, and if something bothers him, it doesn't care who's trying to convince him. You're not going to convince him. Like he's going to stick with what he wants to do. And because Kristaps Porzingis missed an exit interview, he's holding a grudge. And because Carmelo Anthony hates it in New York, he's keeping him. So I think it's funny. I think Phil Jackson is a bum, and his legacy is going to be tarnished because of this. Next topic. Spurs, they're shopping LaMarcus Aldridge, another trade that could happen tonight. Do you think this is possible? Do you think it's going to happen tonight? Do you think that it will happen in the next few weeks?
I think they're trying to make room for Chris Paul. And if they shop LaMarcus Aldridge, like maybe they could get like a late lottery pick for him contract, because he's only under contract for 2 more seasons. Yeah, get rid of that. Get another good young player for Pop to mold to become a next superstar, and try to go after Chris Paul.
Yeah, it makes sense. It seems like they're trying to really go after Chris Paul. He might either go to Spurs, maybe Houston, who knows? But it seems like Aldridge never really fit in like we thought he would in San Antonio. So I get this. I don't think the Spurs are going to be that great next season. Kawhi will be awesome to watch, but they're taking a step back, and unless he can really take over, I think we'll see the same thing we've been seeing.
And this was supposed to be their year. Game 1 with Kawhi, they were doing great against the Warriors, and then Kawhi gets hurt, and then they're done. So he's fitting kind of well there, but in the playoffs, they've had some bad luck.
Cavs firing David Griffin, and Chauncey Billups might be his successor.
I love Chauncey Billups. That guy's great on ESPN.
This has to affect their chances of re-signing LeBron, though, right?
I mean, I feel like LeBron's going to do whatever he wants just based on like his own personal interests. I don't think his friendship with David Griffin's really going to overpower what's best for him and him knowing what's best for him.
But what do you think? Because there's not only this, there's them pursuing Jimmy Butler and players on the Cavs saying, "Don't come here. It's a volatile situation." It seems like things are not going well in Cleveland.
If LeBron leaves that franchise, they won't make the playoffs for another 10 years.
Probably not, unless Kyrie Irving can magically will them there.
Yeah, he can't win by himself, Kyrie. I don't think.
No, he can't. So I think it's it makes sense. Their owner is a bum. He's made a lot of mistakes for a guy who's won a title. He's not very good at his job. All right, and the NHL expansion draft. I love it. I love the NHL. You know me. Something that's kind of changing things. They have you can take players from other teams. You can, protect players, make sure that they are untouchable, like a no trade clause. And it's in Las Vegas. So I'm going to take a different angle. How do you think the Las Vegas Golden Knights and the Las Vegas Raiders will do in that market?
I think they'll do well, and I like what the Knights have been doing. I saw that they're like some teams are trading them first-round picks to either like A, take players, or B, not take certain players. So if you could build a young core with these guys and also take veterans from other players, it could easily set them ahead of a few teams like the Islanders or the Devils right now.
I think it's an uphill battle. They're going to have to build through the draft, and they're doing a lot of cool things with taking these assets. Colin Miller from the Bruins, they got him in the expansion draft, immediately traded him to the Maple Leafs for a draft pick. So they're doing a lot of creative things. It's fun to watch. One last thing that's not on the rundown, but we have to talk about it. It was there before. Derek Carr, that's what it was, signing the 5-year extension to stay with the Raiders. We all saw this coming.
Yeah, we all saw it coming. Like, he's a very good Christian boy. What do you think? Like, a great, extremely one of the most loyal quarterbacks in the NFL is gonna sit out and throw a temper tantrum about his contract. He put up MVP like numbers last year. He was, I think, finished third in MVP voting. One of the best quarterbacks in the league. Like, you got to extend him. You've built this all the way up to what it is now. What, you're not going to pay him? We all knew it was coming, and hopefully he leads the Raiders to a lot of success.
Yeah, the Raiders, I mean, they got their guy. That's, if you're a Raiders fan, you got him locked up. All you need to do is put a team around him, build up that defense, which is getting better, and eventually they'll be challenging the Patriots for that AFC championship, which they'll probably end up doing this year. They won't win.
So.
They won't win, but they'll challenge them.
We'll try, you know.
That's all that matters. This has been the Jon Lebo Show, episode from June 22nd, 2017. Draft Day preview. We hope you enjoyed. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at Jon Lebo Show. Excuse me. And you also check out our website, jonleboshow.com. I wrote an article yesterday on the Red Sox and kind of gave a pessimistic view. And we'll post this on there as well. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.